Okay, we're recording.
Right. Okay. Well, it's Hugh here, and it's just my job to start with. Firstly, to say very many thanks to Richard from the Cotswold Wildlife Park for joining us for the second year in a row to answer your questions about life in the park and the animals and looking after them. So we're very excited to have you with us again. We've got some students in one of our hospital bases. We have some students who are able to join independently from home. So that's great to see you all here. I will hand over to, well, before I hand over, Liv, just to say, if you can keep your cameras off, that would be great. Microphones obviously will need to be used just as and when they're needed. And I will hand over to Liz, who is with the group in the hospital base, to get us started with the questions.
Hi, Richard. We've got a group of young people here who've come up with some questions for you.
Excellent.
So they can see you. You can see where Richard is, bottom left. Right, shall I crack on with the questions?
Sure.
We've got a whole mixture of questions, so I hope you're ready.
Oh, that's okay. I'll do my best.
Our first question was, what did your job involve at the zoo?
So my job might be slightly different to normal keepers' jobs, as I'm the deputy head of primates, small mammals, and birds. So basically, all the smaller animals I look after and my team looks after. So day to day, I oversee the team and we look after the animals, which means we feed and water them every day. Some animals, like the otters, they get fed six to 7 times a day. Lots and lots of little feeds, and that's to mimic what they'd be like in the wild. So naturally, an otter would be up and down rivers, eating all the time. So we couldn't give them a sort of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner because that wouldn't be right for their bodies. So a lot of the time is taken up with food preparation, feeding. Obviously, there's a lot of cleaning as well involved. And then, yeah, making the animals' lives the best we possibly can. So enrichment, for them to do. And when everybody is eventually allowed back to the park, we do a lot of keeper talks and encounters and things like that as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
You mentioned a few, but what animals do you actually have at the zoo? What sort of range of animals do you have?
We've got almost everything you could possibly think of. We've got, starting at the smallest, we've got a colony of ants at the zoo, and then we've got spiders, lots of invertebrates and insects, all different species of frogs, reptiles and amphibians, and snakes, from small snakes to 17-foot long anacondas. We've got lots of lemur species and small primate species. Armadillos, tamaduas, giant anteaters. We've got all the bigger things as well. So we've got giraffes, zebras, rhinos, tapirs, all manner of bird species. We've got close to 100 different bird species as well. And then we've got lots of rodent species and a children's farm as well. So we've got all different, like everything you could possibly think of. We don't have elephants and we don't have large apes, and that's just because we wouldn't have the capacity to provide what we think they would need. So everything else, basically. Yeah.
Big question. What's your favourite and why?
I always get asked this question, always. And honestly, my favourite differs all the time. My favourite animal in general is a giant anteater. I just think they're absolutely, they're incredible. The evolution process that they've gone through. They don't have teeth or jaws. They've just got a big long tongue, perfectly adapted for breaking open termite mounds and eating all the termites. And what's a really cool fact for you, which I always like to tell people about them, is they actually use their ants' defense to help eat the ants. So the ants produce a formic acid, which is something they use to deter predators, but the anteater eats the ants, and then the formic acid that's used against the anteater then helps to process the ants in the anteater's stomach, if that makes sense. So it actually uses them against, which is amazing. And also they have a massive tail like a brush, which they use like a brush, or they curl it over themselves like a big sheet as well. My favourite animal at the minute is our crowned shafaka. He's a species of lemur, and he's called Mate. So he's in our lemur walkthrough, and he is the most charismatic, daft animal I've ever met, ever. he's just lovely. He likes to. We quite often have to monitor the paths and see what's happening. He likes nothing more than if you're just stood by a bench or a piece of railing, he'll come and sit right by you and just hold on to your jumper. Just because he likes to hold on, just to be near people, and then he'll hop away. And also, he'll do anything for a walnut as well. Honestly, anything. He's fantastic. He's just such fun to work with. So yeah, he's probably my favourite. His mate So yeah, he's in the walkthrough, and he's usually, if you look on our website and things like that, you'll spot his face. He's quite. He looks like a bit like a teddy bear. Yeah. Cool.
People want to know what sort of cats you have at this stage.
Oh, cats, yeah. So we've got smaller species of cats. We've got palace cats, which are tiny little grey balls of fluff from the Himalayas. They're fantastic, but they always look really grumpy. And we've got the clouded leopards. We've got those as well. They're up by the giraffes. They're a medium-sized cat. And we've also got the Asiatic lions as well. We've got a pride of lions here, which are fantastic. Rana and Kana are mum and dad, and they get along really well. And they've got their 3 cubs as well. Well, they're not really cubs anymore. They're the same size as mum, but yeah, they get along really well.
How do you make sure that the animals are happy at the zoo?
How do we make sure they're happy? Sorry.
Yeah, how do you ensure that the animals are happy?
Various ways, really. I mean, obviously, we first things first. We need to know where the animal comes from, and how we can best provide natural life and activity. So that would be through the right environment, heat. If it's a tropical species, they're normally in the tropical house, obviously, and their diet. We need to make sure their diet is right, which I really enjoy doing. It's something I have a really interest in. For example, fruit. We don't actually feed our monkeys and things a lot of fruit, which a lot of people tend to think you do. However, the sugar content of a carrot that you want to eat is this equivalent to a wild banana. So we actually feed them a lot of root veg, and I just find it incredibly interesting, and it helps them maintain a healthy enough lifestyle. And happiness-wise, it's hard to judge some things, especially when their natural features always make them look a bit grumpy, but we measure it by health a lot of the time. If they're happy, if they're running around and doing as they should, and their fur looks healthy and their weight is correct, and they're breeding as well, we make sure they're happy. We also provide a lot of enrichment as well, and that can be putting some spices, the spices you get in your spice rack. Sometimes we put them, for example, in an enclosure with the cats or the wolverines, and they like to roll around and smell it. That's something that they enjoy. Other types of enrichment are like puzzle feeders and things like that to do. And sometimes, if you just throw a new rotten log into an enclosure, animals love it. Meerkats love a rotten log. They rip it apart and eat the bugs and everything else, and that's generally how we tell if they're happy and keep them happy.
Brilliant. How do you work out what size cage the animals need so that they're happy?
We actually go off guidelines. So obviously we research the animal, and we take into account what they would need, and we provide the biggest enclosure we possibly can for them to be happy and well. So we have this, it's a bit like a governing body, if you will, called European Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which offers us guidance, basically. So for the vast majority of the animals in our care, there is best practice guidance notes. Sorry, I'm just going to try and move out the sun a little bit. It's right in my eyes. So yeah, we've got best guidance practice notes, really. So these sort of things, guidelines, will guide us to how big an enclosure needs. More importantly, what the enclosure, how it's made safe. For example, certain heights for like the lions and things. Obviously, we don't want it too short, just in case the lion decides to jump out, and that sort of thing. So that's how we tend to decide. As I said before, we don't house things like elephants and great apes here because we don't feel we will be able to provide the size and the space for their welfare. So that's why we don't.
A question here sort of linked to what you mentioned about the height of the cages.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know what the worst injury an animal has given to the zookeeper at your zoo. Hoping it wasn't too gruesome, and how you what plans do you have in place to try and avoid accidents? It's a really good question.
That's a really good question. Nicely tied in there. I like that. Yeah, you know what? There's never. You always hear you can hear all sorts of injuries on the news and things, but here myself, and here we've never touch wood had a bad accident. The worst things I've had are various talons of like owls and things that go into your fingers and things like that, and I've had a bite off an armadillo, which was never fun. That hurt a bit. That was on my leg. Other than that, there's not really been any gruesome things. We have a lot of health and safety and risk assessments in place. Obviously, as I said previously, the enclosures are designed for our safety as well as the animals' safety. So for dangerous animals, we never work in with them. We do something that's called protective contact. So what that would mean is we are never in the enclosure with the animal. So take the lions, for example, we would lock them out of their house. We would go in and clean the house and put their food inside. Then we would come out, we would move the lions into the house, shut them in the house, and go out and clean outside. So there's never a risk of running into a lion or anything like that, really. For some of our smaller animals, we just have to be quick. Sometimes I've had quite a few bad nips off a penguin. Believe it or not, penguin nips are quite bad. Their beaks are very, very finely serrated backwards, a bit like a steak knife. So if they catch a finger and you pull your finger out, it just slices your finger, which is great for catching and holding fish, but not so good for your fingers. So sometimes you just have to be quick at feeding things to miss accidents. But yeah, touch wood, there's not a great deal of accidents or animal injuries that tend to happen.
I've got a young person here who's going to ask you a few questions about sort of the role, the animals at the zoo, and sort of how it links to animals in the wild.
Sure.
To a different voice.
So one of my questions was, do the animals at the zoo get returned to the wild or spend some time in the wild alongside their time at the zoo?
So a lot of our animals are captive bred. We work from captive bred programs. So the vast majority of our animals, unless it's a specific species we're wanting to look at reintroducing to the wild, are kept and bred in captivity. So the aim generally of the wildlife park, certainly, and other reputable places, if you like, is to maintain a genetically diverse population of an animal should it suddenly die out in the wild from whatever reason. It might be a disease, or a hurricane might wipe a species out. We would then have the species safe, ready to reintroduce into the wild should it all go wrong. So a lot of the time, that's the case. However, here at the park, we're really proud of being involved in the White Stork project. You guys may or may not have heard it, but we're actually looking at rewilding the white stork and returning it to the British Isles. So bringing it back and releasing it. And actually, we here are involved in that. So we have a group of captive white storks, and they breed every year, and we assist feed them. So we help the parents to raise the chicks as many as we can. And those chicks are actually run by the BTO, which is the British Trust of Ornithology, and then they are released, and they actually get released every year. So we've had a couple of years of releasing now from the Knepp estate. So from here, they're big enough, we travel them all the way to West Sussex, and then they are released back into the wild. And actually some of our birds, which is really nice to see, have a little tag on. And last year they migrated all the way to Gibraltar and further, and hopefully the hope is they'll come back. So yeah, so the vast majority of our animals remain in captivity to maintain a captive population should things go wrong. However, some species like the white stork we really focus on and do get released into the wild. So the chicks get released into the wild. I hope that answers the question. Sorry, I went off a bit of a tangent there.
The next question that was coming about whether your animals can be released.
Yeah, that's basically the same thing. So, we, for example, when we breed our rhinos, which we do quite often, they are part of a stud book. So someone actually looks after the animals, and basically it's a big. It's obviously on a computer now. It used to be on a book, and it's the lineage of all the rhinos in captivity in the world, essentially. And someone goes, okay, so your female that you've just bred there, she would really be a really good match genetically for this male. And that male might be in France, it might be in Spain, it might be in Africa, anywhere. And we move them around and the rest of the zoos, and then we all work together to try and keep the genetics really healthy and really diverse. And then it's certain species that we sort of run on a sideline to that wildlife pack sort of thing, like the white storks, that we actually reintroduce into the wild. So yeah.
What does the zoo do for populations of animals in the wild?
Oh, sorry, I missed that question.
What does the zoo do for the populations of animals in the wild?
So the biggest thing that we do, obviously, is we try and maintain the species, as I mentioned before. But also, I think one of our roles is trying to educate the public, you guys, and just trying to get the message out there of what we can do as a planet for the species. Really, we have, take for example, the penguins. We've got Humboldt penguins here, and our talks always contain parts of what we can do to try and stop pollution and things like that. So by us having the ambassador species at the park, so species that someone can go, oh, look at that penguin, that's fantastic, and learn about the penguins, that then transfers really well into the wild. So by us educating people on the animal, hopefully it helps the animal in the wild. If people can take a bit more interest and actually see an animal in real life, sometimes they can connect really well to the species out that might be struggling out in the wild. So that's probably the main role.
That's brilliant, because we've been doing lots of work on climate change and seeing how that affects animals in the wild.
Sure.
I'm interested to see how zoos think with biodiversity. The next group of questions are, you can choose not to answer if you don't want to, but they're questions specifically to you. And another young person's going to read them out.
Okay.
Do the visitors do anything which annoys you or the animals?
Visitors can be good and bad. Vast majority of people are very, very good. Yeah. And to be honest with you, no, I think the most annoying thing it is, which we actually don't get very often here, and it's people trying to feed the animals different things. Our animals are fed, as I said previously, we spend hours and hours looking into their right food for them and the right diet to keep them healthy as possible. And when a member of public offers them a piece of their ice cream, that usually undoes our hard work quite often. Normally, the member of public gets can get a bite, so that's not an issue. But yeah, that's probably the most annoying thing the public do. They're here for a fun day out, and most people are very good. Nothing I don't think annoys the animals. On occasion, we might get some members of the public that like to bang on glass and on cages and things to try and get the animals' attention. I'm sure you guys may have seen that sort of thing before. And that probably annoys the animals. But to be honest with you, the animals, because they're in their enclosure, they don't really pay much attention to any of the public or anything. They're in their own little happy little world, and they know that up to that enclosure barrier, they're perfectly safe and nothing can hurt them. So really, there's not much of an annoyance really. Certainly from the animals' mind, they don't like it. I think some species might be missing the public a little bit, I think, from us being shut. I think they like to people watch a lot of the time. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically, yeah, I think they like, and obviously we're dog friendly here, so I think they sometimes like to see the dog as well.
The next question, you can translate it, the word zookeeper for you. The next question is,
how much do you get paid?
Oh, not enough. It's actually, it really does differ. From zoo to zoo, really. Well, it's actually not a very high-paid job for what we have to study for. So the vast majority of keepers nowadays have studied to degree level or even to PhD level, and certainly don't get paid PhD level sort of wages. So it's a decent living wage, we shall say. So yeah. But I would hazard a guess that there's not a single keeper that's working as a keeper today that would say they do it for the money. You know, everybody here, we're really incredibly lucky, and you know, animals and look after animals is our passion. And we love coming to work every day, enjoy it every day. So the vast majority of us certainly started doing it for free as volunteering, and would probably, if it was allowed, to do it for free as well. So I don't, you know, money for us and keepers right across the globe really is, yeah, it's not done for the money. It's done for the love of the animals and the passion.
Another question.
Yeah.
Are you scared of spiders or any other animals?
I am actually not scared of any animal. No, I know some keepers that are scared of animals. I'm actually not scared of anything, and I actually keep some spiders at home. So I keep some tarantulas and things in my house. This is an extra interesting thing. Not free roaming, I might add. They are in an enclosure. But yeah, nothing really phases me that much. So some things, some creepy crawlies may be a bit gross, you know, but nothing really scares me or anything else. Yeah.
We've got another young person who's going to ask you some questions now.
No, that's fine.
How many frogs do you have? So
we actually have. I'm not actually sure on the exact. We've got about 55 to 60 frogs here, believe it or not, of varying species, various sizes. I did a little add up this morning just in case this question arose, and yeah, I think we're sitting at about 57 frogs, right from little tiny mantellas, which are probably the size of your thumbnail, a little bit bigger, up to big tomato frogs, which are about the size of a big tomato.
We have a second frog question, I think.
Sure.
Do the frogs have names like Bertie?
They actually don't. No, none of the frogs have individual names. Most of our animals here at the park do have individual names. However, generally the smaller species, because we've got a lot of them, don't tend to be given names unless they're particularly charismatic, and then they'll get a name. But no, none of our frogs have names. I'm happy to name a frog Bertie. That sounds a good name. We can do that. That's not a problem. We'll have a look.
Which one do you think you might call Bertie? Have you got one in mind?
Who could we call Bertie? We could call one of our mossy frogs Bertie. They're great fun. The mossy frogs, they're the most amazing species. They have extra parts of skin, so their body looks like a piece of moss. They're an amazing frog. So they'll sit on a mossy log, which we give them, and sometimes it's hard pressed for even us keepers to spot them. They're so well camouflaged, and they, more often than not, they're sat perfectly right in plain view, but they're so well camouflaged. So one of those could be Bertie. That'd be fine.
What is your longest snake?
The longest snake, was that?
Yep.
Yeah, so we've got our green anacondas, and our longest anaconda at last measurement was about 17.5 foot, which I think is about 5 meters long. So quite long, and there's still some growing to do. Obviously, we don't measure them that regularly, just because they're so enormous, and spend most of the time in the water. But every year we will get them out and do a proper measurement. So yeah, quite a large snake, and it's probably about so thick. So quite large snake. Yeah.
Water.
Say that again. Sorry.
Did you say they live in the water?
Yeah, so because an anaconda in the wild, they're from South America. So in the wild, because they've got such a large body, big heavy body, they spend the vast majority of the time in rivers and lakes, in the slow moving areas, with just their head sticking out of the water. And they will sit there and they will wait for a piece of food, an item of food, which is more often than not, they can, when they're fully grown, they can take antelope and things. They are really large. And they will sit there for perhaps a year without moving or eating, and then they will wait for their perfect opportunity to strike and constrict. So ours are the same. They have a huge pool with an underwater viewing. So we've got a glass viewing area, and so you can see the size of their body. Because if you looked at them from the top, you wouldn't barely even notice them, because the head's it's probably only this sort of large, really small. But but the rest of the body stays underwater, and that's the best place for the bodies. Obviously, because they're so long, if they are out on land, they're quite vulnerable. Just because, you know, if my body was 5 meters long, and you went around a corner, I suppose you wouldn't know what was trying to bite your tail or things like that, really. So that's why they spend time in the water. Oh, sorry, I missed that question.
Are you getting a duck-billed platypus?
Oh, we wish. That would be fantastic. That would be a fantastic species to have. But unfortunately, yeah, I don't think there's. In fact, I don't think there's any in the UK currently. So no, unfortunately not. They are an amazing species, though, and you know they're one of the few egg-laying mammals, which is cool.
Are any of your animals expecting babies?
Not yet, but soon. Basically, coming into spring, summertime now. It's a lot of the time when animals are breeding. So we will have a lot of bird eggs. Our penguins are already looking to nest, and our storks are, and a lot of mammals and stuff. They're all doing their courtship at this sort of time and pairing off. So we'd expect them to start to mate in the next sort of month, and then babies usually come about just the start of summer. So, you know, maybe June, July time, a lot of species. Obviously, things like, for example, the rhinos, etc., have a lot longer pregnancies. So that can sort of happen anywhere year round. But as it currently stands at the minute, nothing is expecting just yet. But very soon we would start to see the signs for babies and things like that.
Some lovely quirky questions now. What unusual friendships have formed between species at the zoo?
Oh, that's a really good question. Let me just have a think for a second.
That was from one of the teachers here, so you can blame them for asking something.
No, that's a really good question, and I would never have think. But actually, we have some unusual, sort of our unusual and sort of that. We've got a Coscaroba swan, so it's a species of swan. He's white and he's got a red beak, and he likes to spend a lot of time hanging around this white stork enclosure. All the time you'll find him around there, and I think he probably quite likes it because they look a bit similar to him. They're white with a big red beak, so he likes to hang around there. We've got a couple of different lemur species. They like to hang around together. They're in a mixed lemur exhibit in our Madagascar. But Mateso, as I mentioned before, my favourite, he's one, and he is really, really friendly and always cuddles up to Ma, our oldest female lemur. She's really old now. She's the grandma to most of our lemurs, and him and her are always found cuddled up together, or they like to clean each other and things like that. And that's really nice to see. Obviously, in the wild, those species, although all lemurs are found in Madagascar, they would never encounter each other, and certainly won't be as friendly as they are. But on an evening, I'll find them actually cuddled up together and hugging and things like that. So that's quite nice to see as well. Some of the bird species in there as well, they like to hang around by the lemurs. And we've also got the squirrel monkeys and the agoutis. So an agouti is a rodent. It's almost like a giant guinea pig. And they are like the hoovers of the forest. And naturally, in the wild, they would live together, and they work together. So squirrel monkeys, they're always in the canopies and running around and eating, and they're really messy, squirrel monkeys, really messy. They always drop the food, and they drop the food, and there's agouti, he eats it all. So he acts like the jungle hoover, basically. And they work together. So an agouti will crack something open with his big, strong jaws so that the monkeys can then get in and eat it. And vice versa. And the monkeys then will sound out an alarm if something's coming, and then he can run away. So, yeah, they all work together.
There's a couple of questions to go together here. Which is the best behaved animal, and which is the worst?
Let me think for the best behaved animal. They're all, they can all have their moments, I can assure you. The best behaved animal, let me think. I think probably one of the rhinos. She's actually just gone. One of the rhinos were really good. So when we want to move an animal on, we'll bring especially the big ones like the rhinos. We bring a crate in, something big enough to fit a rhino in, basically. And a couple of months before they're due to move, we'll put it into their enclosure, and then we'll start to let them go in and get used to it and get normal and things like that. And she was a fantastic rhino, really well behaved, straight in and out of the box. And when it came to loading up day, she came straight in, and we shut the doors behind her, and that was perfect, perfectly well behaved animal. Probably the worst behaved animal is our armadillo called Ray. He's a little nightmare. He's great fun, but he's a little nightmare. He always tries to get in your wellies and tries to see what's in your wellies and that sort of thing, and scratch your wellies and scratch your boots. Even though there's food present, he just likes to chase you around and get under your feet. So he's probably the worst behaved. He's only doing it because he's interested in you and to see what's happening. But sometimes when you're trying to walk around the enclosure, every footstep, there's an armadillo close to being underneath your foot. So you have to sort of just watch where you're going with him. So he's a little troublemaker. So he's probably the one. Also, if you put a bucket down, he will flip that bucket over to see what's in it straight away. So you can't do any of that. So yeah, he's just mischievous more than anything. He's Ray, I think, but he's probably the worst behaved animal I work with.
What pets do you have at home?
I've got quite a lot of pets at home, actually. I've got a couple of dogs. I've got some gerbils. I've got snakes, spiders, frogs. What else have I got? I've even got some fancy cockroaches. They're a bit different than normal cockroaches. They're called headlight cockroaches, and they have little yellow dots, the males do, on their heads, and they glow in the dark. So they're pretty incredible. So yeah, I have quite a lot of little bits and pieces. Yeah.
That's like a home from home when you come to work.
Not everything is in the house. Some are in the shed and things like that. So
we've got our last question that we came up with.
Sure.
I'm not sure whose this question was. It's what's the sweetest or the nicest story that you've heard about while working at the zoo?
Ooh.
Loveliest thing you've heard about or been there or.
I'm just trying to think now. Sweetest, one of the sweetest stories. Gosh, that's another great question. We've had a couple of wedding proposals. They were really nice. They were nice. Not really pertaining to animals as such, as more people, but we had a couple of wedding proposals, and they were in like the tropical house and things like that. And if they get in touch with us, we're more than welcome to. We usually help them set up these sort of things. We've also had one stories that I really enjoy hearing is when the public come back, and we have quite a lot of regulars. What's really nice is I was chatting to a family, and they used to come here as kids, and now they have grandkids, and they were here with their grandkids, and it's one of the most lovely stories. And it's great to know that the families are coming back and still enjoying it. So, you know, the grandparents, the grandma and granddad used to run around and play the same, and they share stories with me about how they used to sit by the penguins and things like that, and now their grandkids are doing it as well. So that's absolutely lovely to see and come back. And one of the most famous things, actually, that just reminded me, you may have seen it, you may have not. There's a really famous picture of a little girl sat on a wall, and she's got a penguin next to her. And it's a black and white picture, and it's used all over the world, believe it or not, now for like postcards and birthday cards and things like that. And actually, she came back and visited here, and it was here that photo was taken. And she came back as an adult, and we let her little girl who meet the penguins as well. So that was a really nice story to see as well. Yeah.
Lovely. It sounds like
Yeah.
lovely to have a really good, feel very affectionate towards the park. That's amazing. That's all of our questions from this end. Richard,
Okay.
thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you to all the young people there for all their questions. We've got a couple of other young people who are on this call, and I wanted to give you the chance, if you wanted to ask a question. To do that, you need to click on the raise hand icon that you'll see down the bottom right. So I might wait for a few seconds, and if I see a raised hand go up, that's great. You obviously know when he has to ask a question. While you're thinking about that, one question I had, Richard, was: are you opening on April the 12th? Are you reopening?
As far as I know, we're opening as close to that date as we possibly can. Yeah. We've not got an exact set date yet, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it'd be very, very soon after that, I would imagine. Yeah, we can't wait to have everybody back. So
brilliant! Just in time for spring to really get going.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one other question? You mentioned that animal near the start that was your current favourite.
Oh yeah,
like to cuddle you on. You said you called it a shafaka. How on earth do you spell that so I can look it up?
Oh, okay, so it's a crowned, crowned obviously, and then sifaka. So it's an Sifaka.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. That's a kind of lemur, isn't it? Crowned shafaka.
Yes, yeah. He's the ones that you may have seen if you've seen them on television. They do the funny jumping side to side jumping thing from trees on the ground. They do like a leapy sort of thing. And not a lot of lemurs do that, but they do it. And what's really cool about them as well is their tail coils up a bit like a chameleon's, so they can get it out of the way for jumping. Whereas a lot of lemurs, they obviously, like ringtail lemurs, they have the big sticky up tail, and that's to help them see each other through the grass. Whereas mates on the Sifaka, they have a thinner tail. It's not used in display or anything. They just curl it up out of the way when they want to jump around. So.
Right, thank you, fantastic. I'll just add that I like the story about the wedding proposals. It reminded me of my wife's nephew proposed to his now wife in the elephant house at Cheshire Zoo because he's so into elephants. So that reminded me of that story.
We get a surprising amount, yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Richard? We don't want to leave anybody out. Lorna, did you want to ask or say anything?
No, there was loads there. It was brilliant. And no, I haven't actually, not at the moment. But that was ace. Thanks a lot, Richard. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Really, it's fantastic for you to spend all this time with us, almost 40 minutes now this morning, helping us celebrate our Science Week, for which the theme this week has been saving the planet. The young people have been doing lots of learning and work on that theme. So learning about the diversity animal kingdom and looking after them obviously fits beautifully into that theme. So thank you very much again.
No problem at all. I've really enjoyed it. It's been good. Nice. It's nice to talk to you guys. Obviously, we've missed you guys for nearly a year now. So
have you been? Did you not open in the summer at all?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Yes.
We did open in the summer. It just seemed a long time ago, but yes, we did open in the summer. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much then. And
that's fine.
Time to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
I'm going to go straight off because I need to teach somebody straight away. So thank you very much again.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks then. Bye.